Alright, Trooper. Arguably one of the most well-rounded and most fun classes to play in TC2, with many people of varying skill levels, from casual players to competitive players playing him daily, and with his very simple game style, anyone can play him with little to no experience and still do well. His wide assortment of weapons available to him makes him one of the most unique classes to play in TC2, from multiple different playstyles and loadouts to choose from serious competitive play to pure meme loadouts, making any trooper stand out from each other. And with him being a natural team leader, you can expect this man to be the backbone of your team if you're currently on, and someone to fear if you're not, even though he might occasionally blurt out some questionable dialogue at times.
Come to daddy!
I agree.
But anyways, we're back to discussing weapon stereotypes for troopers, so if your favorite weapon gets a negative stereotype, don't take it too seriously. These are only made for jokes and comedy. Got it? Alright, let's go. The stock rocket launcher. It's everything every trooper, regardless of skill, could need to take down anyone, since this thing is always powerful and consistent and perfect for any situation you're in. You can't really put a specific stereotype on this other than the new player who just started the game for the first time, or the guy who knows this weapon is clearly the best primary launcher in the game for trooper. You can see more clear and obvious stereotypes for their choice of secondaries and melee weapons. Has anyone actually used this weapon before, seriously? I mean, I've only seen one or two troopers actually use this before. They usually use the original for how the rocket projectile comes out of the middle of the screen and use it to aim better than it normally coming out of the right side of their screen. Or they use it for pogoing and rocket jump rollouts, or rumor-based set, I guess. These guys are usually pretty competent, but it shares the same stereotypes as the stock rocket launcher, but without the new player stigma, probably. But you know, troopers who use the original are pretty rare, so if you see one you're playing against or being with you, you should check how he plays, because it's going to indicate how well he does for the rest of the matches ahead. Or you controversially main soldier in TF2, or you used to like to play that old game called Roblox Tower Battles and want to have some fun memories about it. That's quite it, really. Oh boy, this weapon. This thing has the biggest difference in visible skill level, or if they despise the entire enemy team regardless of their class choice. There are a lot of stereotypes for this weapon, so sit tight for a minute. I'll separate the stereotypes from them fighting the more relevant classes they usually use this weapon against, and themselves in general. These guys just hate flankers in general, but you know, you can't really blame them. Anyone who has played the game long enough knows it's annoying as hell to deal with some flanker main running around and killing you, and are constantly bugging you at random times, so why not kill them with a single rocket easily without a second thought? For them fighting other troopers, it's usually that to counter that one shoulder who is still dominating their entire team even after the reworks of that subclass. Or fighting those troopers who always blast jumps towards the person they fight. When they fight arsonists who can air blast their stock rocket projectiles, they switch to this weapon since 90% of arsonists who can air blast can't react fast enough to air blast the fast projectile this weapon has, and get completely destroyed. For brutes, they usually try to corner peek them a lot until they either die from the trooper from the trooper themselves, or the trooper messes up and gets shredded to pieces, or they accidentally blow themselves up from the same corner they were hiding behind. For mechanics, they either hate those battle mechanics who spam mini sentries, or the mechanic themselves since they're basically a flanker themselves. Or they hate any kind of mechanic buildings, mainly sentry guns, and they usually try to snipe them from across the map even though the mechanic is going to start taking the sentry gun. For marksmen, they usually try to hide somewhere away from them and starts to snipe them from long range, and since this weapon has a 25% damage increase and an 80% projectile speed, it's easier to kill the marksman who's giving them a harder time if they have the slow reaction times. Also mentioning they hate doctors pocketing or training with each other, and for the person using this weapon themselves, they usually can't aim this weapon and miss all their shots, making them free food to anyone. It's either a tryhard using this weapon or a clueless new player who saw the 25% damage increase and decided to use it without reading its other stats. And if you see someone who can actually aim the rockets, it's horrifying to play against them, so watch out for those guys, and for good reasons. I've carried entire games with this weapon alone. And for low-level players who use this weapon, they usually blow themselves up from either that flanker or agent running up in their faces, as mentioned before, accidentally blow themselves up from whatever they're hiding behind. These guys swear by it to use this weapon constantly, thinking they're some of the best players in TC2, but some of them are usually pretty good, but they overestimate their own skill level. Fun fact, one of its most common names is called the direct miss, or the best melee weapon in the game, but we don't talk about that. These guys either play super aggressive or passive depending on their choice of secondary and melee. But these guys typically think that the 20% health on hit makes them invincible, but since you lose one rocket for that stat, it makes them free food to anyone who can snipe them from long range or surprise attack them. You normally see newer players using this, or troopers who play more passively when they're on defense. They usually try to blast jump and or fight someone, but they need something to help get the health back they lost, so they use this thing. But let's be honest, these guys run away as soon as they take any kind of damage at all. It's usually paired with the Conjurer and Katana to get as much health back as possible. It's probably one of the most aggressive and obvious way to ask for a doctor trooper-wise. These guys are still pretty decent at the game. Strangely enough, some people think that's a crutch when paired with the Conjurer since, the constant health regeneration. These guys usually don't want to die, but it's whatever to deal with. One common name to see on the battlefield for this thing is called the Bad Box, but moving on. These guys are just memeing since, it's pretty much useless outside of being a troller and any other meme subclass I'm not aware of. So if you see this weapon on someone, they're either a memer or a clueless new player who didn't read the stats, and since this does no damage, it makes them absolutely useless, or dare I say it, those friendly troopers you normally see on maps like Orange, or any map really that has large spaces for them to practice on, even though, private servers exist and they're free, so... Or a soldier, even though the recent reworks made it less easy to dominate an entire team or actually be able to be countered now. Discount direct hit. This weapon isn't common to see, but only for certain reasons, so let me explain. The first kind of person you see using this weapon is being a hybrid soldier since because of its 25% push force, meaning you'll get more distance out of blast jumping and somewhat using it as a crutch when they miss a guard and start panicking and start spamming rockets whoever they're fighting. Or it's a new player who saw its faster 40% projectile speed and uses it either missing all their shots and blowing themselves up or using it since they can't aim stock projectiles. Otherwise, this weapon isn't actually used by anyone other than those two situations. This weapon is actually surprisingly valuable in most situations, believe it or not. The people who normally use this weapon either have poor ammo management with stock since they like shooting off random rockets whenever nothing is currently happening at the moment, or they understand it's a side race of the stock launcher depending on who you ask, with it having an alt-fire mini-crit projectile which can disable mechanics buildings for 4 seconds, and unlimited ammo which is usually paired with the buff banner to make the 20% slower reload speed more manageable for them, even though it's not that noticeable most of the time. Also mentioning the 20% damage penalty to buildings is not being able to do critical damage balances its buffs in return. These guys are usually pretty competent most of the time, or they're the people who like to use its alt-fire way too much that makes them free food to basically anyone who could sneak up or surprise attack them, but you can't really blame them since who doesn't like hitting someone or an entire group of people with it, since it's pure euphoria in your brain for at least a few seconds afterwards. Okay, but seriously, this weapon isn't going to be used but for 4 types of people. Either those who know and can overload jump with this, a clueless new player who blows themselves up in spawn when they saw this weapon and tried it out for themselves without reading its stats, or them just flat out hating mechanics entirely by completely shredding their nest with their buildings clustered together, or the people who use this weapon are either too lazy or tired to put in the effort to play trooper, so they use this thing. Does anyone actually use this weapon after its rework? I mean, I guess it's better in almost a direct side grade if you use it correctly, but most people who would think it's horrible compared to its old self. People who use this are usually pretty competent at rocket jumping and pair it with the parabomber or gunboats, but struggle to actually get kills themselves since they're pretty noticeable to everyone once they start rocket jumping, so they get shut down quickly. I mean, the only kind of subclass that this thing could be useful for is being a roamer who focuses on single targets, but I doubt anyone is going to use this weapon seriously. It encourages you to constantly rocket jump because while rocket jumping, the speed of the rocket goes 80% faster, and for every kill it adds another rocket to your max clip size with caps at 8, meaning if you can get kills, you can actually be terrifying in exchange for 30% less reserve ammo. But let's be real, no one is going to use this weapon, it's most likely going to be a waiting game to see if it comes true or not. Discount Wrecker's Yard and Part Liberty Launcher put together. Okay, this thing is actually somewhat decent for trooper, even though some people might doubt me. The only reason why you would see someone using this is either them being a completely clueless new player who saw its weapon stats and had an extra rocket without reading the rest of its stats thinking it'll do more damage even though it does do more damage than stock. But you have to be right up in someone's face, which usually means you might blow yourself up while doing 145% damage max, and if not, slightly worse than stock. Or somebody heard or saw this weapon was actually somewhat viable at close range, or they have a pocket crit stocked around them 24/7 when wanting to see for themselves if it was actually viable in only those 2 situations. I mean, the best possible way of using this thing is spamming it down a choke point or when people are clustered up together since this thing has a 10% bigger blast radius. I mean, the only redeemable factor of this weapon is the 25% reduction in damage you get when you rocket jump with this, and the 10% blast radius increase, otherwise it's just okay, I guess. So if anyone wants to try it out for themselves, be my guest, but it's still overshadowed by any other launcher.
Building a sentry. Down.
Sharpshooting annihilator. I like your style.
Discount grenade launcher for trooper. You main Annihilator, but since it's full of Annihilator Knights, so you switch to this weapon as a mediocre alternative. I mean, nobody honestly uses this weapon. I mean, maybe it's the clueless new player who saw the 10% damage bonus and 20% faster projectile speed and didn't even read the stat about the rockets arcing at all, but other than that, this weapon isn't thought about at all, which is kinda sad actually, what do you think about it? Alright, this thing is only used if you either want to be an actual soldier from the 1960s to 70s with the Boonie Blaster and Reserve Shooter, which are based off the M14 if anyone wants to know that, or the Shotgun to be a much slower flanker, or be a meme class by using any banner or the personal death rate with this. It used to be pretty meta for the same purposes since it used to give you a 25% health boost and speed boost, including a 2x cap speed, but it's now gone in exchange for a 30% faster reload speed on secondary weapons. So it's only going to be focused now on a somewhat overweight flanker now. Pretty sure it's not going to be used as much as its old self anymore, but who knows.
Okay, here it is, Mr. Krabs, fresh from the oven. I'll be returning to my life now.
Not yet. I gotta make sure you did it right. Wait a second. This would go great with
Flanker.
Whoop. So, you tried to kill me over a little new age management, eh?
I mean, does anyone actually use this weapon as a legit weapon, or just a meme weapon? These guys either use this weapon as a troll because of its 65% push force bonus, which is absolutely massive, or they spam this thing down a choke point, or a lot of people are clustered together to get free kills, or use it to get environmental kills as well. I mean, other than those other two situations, this thing really isn't that good. Hey you. Yeah, you. Do you hate confrontation? Think fighting on the front lines like any normal trooper as intended is too scary for you? Well, fear not, this dumb thing will instantly solve that issue for you, featuring an 80% faster acceleration projectile speed and a 134% damage increase at max. The farther away you are from the fight, the more effective this weapon is. Now you can safely get free kills at choke points from the comfort of your team base while hiding away like a little girl, letting the entire server know how much of a little chicken you are. Alright, you get it now, don't you? This thing is really unfun to fight against, especially on payload maps or King of the Hill maps because of the playstyle it promotes, which wastes troopers' full potential as a frontline offensive class. These guys tend to play really passively and hide away from any actual danger and take no actual risks whatsoever. So expect to see a lot of them spamming rockets down choke points or on the payload a lot. These guys might as well be playing sniper at least. It's a bit more respectful to the class itself and probably trooper himself if he was aware of what was actually going on. Alright, these guys are usually team players, but it really comes down to the trooper themselves. It's one of the most common banners to see on the battlefield, but these guys usually only keep it to themselves for the 10% faster reload and faster firing speed most of the time. And if they have it charged, they will have an 80% chance of only using it on themselves for a solo push. But you know, it would have been better to give your team those mini crits instead of being a greedy person, because sharing it with your teammates helps your odds of winning, even though when they use it by themselves, they either get shut down really quickly jumping into a group of people thinking they won't die and getting shredded to pieces, or that one ninja sentry that gets them. They normally use stock and the original or the Cow Mangler 5000 with this playing on offense, but if they actually use this weapon for team support, stick near them because you never know when they're going to be charged and ready to deploy that nerve-wracking horn of death and crit sounds. Oh yeah, and thanks to any troopers who don't hoard all those valuable mini crits for yourself and share it with your teammates instead. You guys are the best. I mean, there's only a couple of reasons why you would see the gunboats being used, so let me be thorough. Firstly, you got your tryhard trooper roamer who goes around rocket jumping, picking off anyone by themselves. They usually have the stock rocket launcher or the original if they feel more obligated to use that, but they usually die because of how much they rocket jump around, becoming free points to farm off of. Secondly, you got your trooper who likes to pogo around, but they have this equipped so they don't take as much fall damage since these guys usually fall to their deaths when they pogo or attempt to guard on someone. Thirdly, you got your hybrid troller with them equipping the Liberty Launcher or the G-Bomb if they're feeling especially reckless, since both of those weapons can give you much more blast jumping distance compared to the rocket jumper at the cost of some health. Those guys are usually pretty scary to play against since they can basically teleport to both ends of the map in a few seconds, so make sure you pay attention to your surroundings because you never know where these guys might pop up next. Lastly, you got the person who uses this with the aerial bomber to carpet bomb an area, but they usually get shut down most of the time by brutes and sentries, so they aren't too much of a threat. These guys would usually be team players, but the only reason why you would see this equipped is a tryhard trooper who didn't care about the amazing damage resistance this banner gives when it's charged, but instead the 30 health points this gives since they can't manage their health so well, so they resort to this. And the same applies for clueless new players who saw this gives 30 more health points without reading the rest of its stats, and what this thing really does. And they still die very quickly. I mean, this is the most unused banner outside of those two situations. So if any troopers who actually use this banner, you guys are really doing your team a favor by giving them damage resistance. These guys never manage to get this banner fully charged at all, and you'll probably never get to hear its horn, normally. You normally see this equipped on troopers who play more defensively or are extremely competent, so watch these guys and see how they perform to figure out their own skill level. Alright, these guys are publicly showing that they hate taking damage in any kind of way and need some type of mini doctor on them at all times. You can normally see this paired with the bad box. I mean black box, to get back as much health as possible since these guys have horrible health management. Or they hate taking random chip damage from that one flanker or marksman who keeps annoying them from a distance. You can barely see anyone actually using this weapon to support their own team with the speed boost and them getting back health for the damage they cause. But if you see someone actually using it to support their team instead of themselves, then appreciate them for what they're doing since those guys are always really nice players to be teammates with. They just want to help the team no matter what. Discount buff banner, but worse. Okay, this weapon is now somewhat back to its former glory of what it used to be. Since the knockback resistance and air control were too easy to take advantage of, so Rolf decided to rework it again. I mean, Troller mains still probably use this? Maybe? Since the updates, no Trollers can be found anywhere if they even still exist anymore. I mean, it could be someone insisting that the subclass is still viable and or they didn't realize the nerfs this class got. I mean, what else can you really say? Nothing much really. The no fall damage and 20% faster reloading speed makes it much better than its last version, but it's going to be really uncommon to see other than Troller mains using this. It's usually paired with the rocket jumper, and with its 100% resistance to air blast, it's most likely going to make it stay this way for a while. I mean, sometimes clueless new players use this for the 20% faster reloading speed without reading the rest of its stats, even though, you know, the buff banner exists and it's a better option, so... Other than those situations, there's nothing much really else for this weapon. Discount Boonie Blaster, but green. Man, talking about this weapon makes me really sad because of the reworks to it. Rolf just straight up murdered this amazing weapon and replaced it with something mediocre in return. The only reason why you would see someone using this weapon is that they didn't realize the weapon got reworked, and once they spawn and switch to this weapon, they immediately give up on it and switch to something else 5 seconds afterwards. Because nobody in their right mind would use this unless they're drunk or something, or unless someone wanted to see how bad this thing really was. Oh yeah, I'd also like to mention that the placeholder icon was never changed, so you wouldn't be able to tell this was changed unless you read its description, which most people don't do, so this caught them off guard when they equipped it. So now, let us pray for this sad dead weapon, now adding it to the graveyard of dead weapons with the soda popper.
This weapon's actually surprisingly powerful on its own in the right situations, even though it's mainly a meme weapon. You mainly see this thing equipped with like the foiler or the rocket jumper just when these guys want to mess around and meme, but other than that you're not going to be seeing it used a lot. Or they could also be trying to complete the full futuristic laser set or something, or that one guy who actually uses it as their main. I can't really tell, to be honest.
These guys only use it to complete the actual soldier set from the 1960s to 1970s. Other than that situation, you won't be seeing this thing being used unless someone forgot to switch it off. When they switch sets or weapons, they tend to play mid to far range away. That's it, really.
Oh yeah, let me in here for a second just to mention that these guys also absolutely hate fighting arsonists who can reflect their rockets, and they can't be bothered to use a shotgun, so they use this thing instead.
This thing used to be completely useless until Rolf somewhat buffed it, but sadly it's kind of useless now. It's either a new player who just started playing the game for the first time and has no unlocks, or in rare cases, it's a player who just hates arsonists with a burning passion. Overall, it's a really terrible melee weapon, and it's overshadowed by the other options Trooper has for melee weapons. But hey Rolf, if you're watching this, bring back the old Crowbar. It was really good and actually made it viable, but we're stuck with this thing now. So people are just going to throw this weapon away and forget it like its old self again. I mean, it's somewhat used as a discount market gardener since it has 50% push force resistance against damage and air blast, so pairing it with the Mantreads can make you more stable, I guess? Maybe. I don't know about it being used outside of memes, but I'm sorry.
Discount Extinguisher. This used to be one of the most meta melee weapons for troopers because of its 15% damage increase, but now people have completely ditched it because of its 25% slower firing speed and damaging yourself if it misses. I mean, I guess new players use this weapon because of its increase in damage, or people who use the older version of this weapon who keep insisting that this weapon is still good even though pretty much everyone ditched it, leaving it for dead once Rolf reworked this weapon. Oh yeah, I'd like to mention something else here, that you can actually double jump with this, like how you can do with the Extinguisher, but well, it's gonna cost almost 75% more health than axe jumping. Discount Escape Plan. Alright, if you see someone using this weapon to actually help their team reach the front lines faster, then these guys are total bros and team leaders regardless of their skill level, since they really just want to help the team out. Especially if there isn't a mechanic around who set up a teleporter, which is really a nice change of pace from those troopers who go off away from their team with little regard for them. So to any troopers who use this weapon for its intended purpose, thank you for helping the team. They may not say it, but they appreciate you. These guys usually pair it with some kind of banner for more of a support role, and if they have a team who knows what they're doing, it shines in that situation. Or, you know, they're just constantly pocket whipping some type of meme class or their friend and nobody else just to terrorize the server depending on their loadouts. I'd also like to mention they try to whip teammates to help them out, but they can't reach anyone, or nobody around them is noticing them trying to help the team, so it causes them to be in a constant fit of rage because of it. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Just please get near one of these guys if you're on the same team as them. It really helps them out as well, including your own teammates.
Hey dog, you get some ice cream? Only a spoonful.
Jesus. This weapon has been through the rework grinder so many times, it's basically just a husk of what it used to be, and it's barely even lethal anymore. It can't even kill a flanker at full health with no overheal. I mean, the only type of people who would use this weapon are soldier mains, but since now that the subclass is now nerfed into the ground, you're not going to see anyone start dominating an entire team like before, unless they are completely clueless. I mean, you're probably only going to see this being used by people who keep insisting soldier is still viable, even though basically breathing on them is enough to stop them in their tracks. It's just basically useless now, and now soldier mains are either going to have to throw out trooper entirely or actually play him as a frontline class instead of a meme class. Since you take 50% more knockback from damage and it having a 40% damage penalty, meaning it can only do 117 damage with its crits on, making it absolutely garbage now compared to its old self. Soldier mains already started complaining about how they can't dominate entire teams anymore with this meme loadout 5 minutes after the recent update had dropped. I mean, maybe Rolf can make it do 135 to 150 damage range at the least, and reducing the knockback penalty just slightly to make it a bit more viable instead of being completely dead moments after the update had dropped. But hey, what do I know, this is just weapon stereotypes. Here's a visual representation of its old self compared to its current self in a nutshell. But if anyone wants to see how soldier mains reacted to this update, well, here you go. Why did Rolf have to nerf my favorite overpowered weapon even though it takes barely any skill to use? Now I can't dominate entire teams with it anymore. As a meme class, so screw Rolf in typical colors too. Just cope with soldier almost being completely useless and stop complaining to Rolf about the weapon, and move on like an adult please. You have to understand Rolf had to balance this weapon for how easy it was to dominate an entire team with it. Even Crystal mentioned this, so it was better for the balance of the game. Besides, it's more intended to be a weapon to finish off weaker enemies, which requires more game sense rather than jumping off blindly into teams for free kills with a meme loadout. The people who typically use this weapon are usually more competent and aware players who have memorized every single health kit location on every single map and who take the games more seriously compared to other troopers. And they like to go super fast when they're on low health with this thing. Sometimes they just charge at the person they're fighting when they're at low health and attempt to kill them, but end up being free points because of the 15% damage vulnerability and 20% damage penalty this thing has when you pull it out, making you super easy to kill. Or these guys like playing Minecraft or something, I can't really tell.
Help!
Come to daddy!
Get ready to get ran over!
Ah! Ah!
Discount Boston Basher, but for Trooper. I mean, this melee really isn't that common to see unless someone is using it with the foiler and a shotgun or the Boonie Blaster to complete the actual soldier from the 1960s to 1970s set. Or a new player who thinks they can do well with it and or thinks they can backstab like Agent's butterfly knife even though it can't. Other than those two stereotypes, nobody is really going to use it outside of those two situations. I guess you hate agent mains, and this is a way to passively mock them, or you like annoying agent to bleed, I guess? Maybe they like b-hopping in CSGO and try to recreate it in TC2? But seriously, this is probably one of the least used melee weapons for Trooper. And that's it, all of Trooper's weapon stereotypes covered in this video. But wait, there's more. If you saw the new timestamps on this video, it also mentions I'm going to be covering flanker weapon stereotypes again, and or adding any sins I wanted to add to the previous video but never realized it. But before that, I'd like to shout out a close friend of mine named Guppy for making me this new amazing profile picture. I'd really appreciate it if you would go check her out on Instagram. Her ad is at the description once again. Guppy, if you're watching this, then thanks a lot for the new profile picture. I really appreciate it. It looks amazing. I'm doing flanker here again, so in this video just to keep it easier to track because Rolf keeps updating with more reworks and I have to cover the newer stereotypes that those weapons bring as well. It's basically a slap in the face by Rolf, so think of it as a small bonus for sticking around. But anyways, let's continue on. Alright, this weapon is actually pretty good now since the recent reworks to it, but you normally see this weapon on sweaty tryhards who like annoying the hell out of the other team with the speed boost this thing has. You know the hit and run strat that Luparo DB has as well? Well, multiply that by 1,000 and you have this guy. If you see someone who can do well, just start running mini sentries to counter them, but since the damage reducing their boost isn't as hard hitting anymore, it should at least deter them for a bit. And these guys like running around fast and pairing with the Witch's Brew or Bloxy-Cola, which is absolutely insane until they get shut down pretty much immediately by everyone focusing them. Also mentioning they like running projectile weapons like the Sandman and maybe using the pistol or more often the conventional to get free boost from across the map without fighting them, making them already annoying on top of that. Oh yeah, the same strat can also be applied with the Soda Popper as well. Also mentioning these guys think they're the gods of the game even though 90% of them are mediocre and die instantly. Oh yeah, this is also the main weapon for people who want to go fast, just hitting people with their melee as a melee flanker meme class. Oh yeah, and the flankers who also have good aim but low game sense often run into things such as random sentry guns, brews who have their gun revved up that they completely ignored or somehow couldn't hear, jumping into entire teams and getting blown to bits. The list just goes on. These guys are either really good or really bad, so pay attention to their skill level. Their own inflated confidence from the speed boost usually gets them killed 90% of the time. Discount family business. These guys usually try to do that backcapping strategy you normally see on Yellow Valley. If not, they think the 30% faster firing speed will save them. But this thing has a 33% damage penalty, and they mostly miss their shots, so they're pretty easy to kill. And if they can aim, it's terrifying to play against them since they can melt your health away like a 1000-degree knife through butter. So watch out for that one guy who can actually use this weapon. Or, you know, they're trying to do speedruns on certain maps on TC2, mainly Yellow Valley and Gorge though. And hey, would you look at that, Rolf made it special this time with 1+1 capture rate instead of it being a heavy duty shotgun like the last time. Lupara DB, but worse, with no knockback and no added mobility. These guys are probably only using this since they want to use the Lupara DB but are hindered by the 20% less accurate stats, so they use this thing as a mediocre alternative instead. Alright, this weapon is actually pretty good and most people are sleeping on this weapon. The people who use this weapon competently realize this because it gets mini crits from behind and it having 50% ramp up damage. It makes these guys almost as lethal as their stock counterparts. So it makes them really annoying to deal with if they can use this weapon perfectly. I've seen some people call this weapon a giant crutch because of its stats, but who knows. These guys just like rushing up to people's faces and just blowing them away without a second thought. Okay, I know this is a quick stereotype being added, but it's just clueless new players who got attracted by the 25% plus health boost and the 40% more accuracy stat. But they didn't read or care about the 20% bullet vulnerability on it. And its other stereotypes are now reinforced by this rework. And some even say it's the flanker's best weapon, but that's up for debate. Oh yeah, these guys will also just try to snipe you from long distances, making them annoying, if they have the Witch's Brute, just give up having full health since you're constantly going to get peppered by them, constantly, regardless of how far away you are from them. This thing used to be the champion of quick burst damage until Rolf made it just stock with a 20% damage penalty at the cost of being able to annoy anyone at long range, since the projectile is now much faster compared to its old self. So these guys normally annoy the hell out of you from far range, but they are pretty easy to kill at close range, so try to get near them and you should be able to kill them easily. And this weapon's unique stat of piercing damage resistances isn't going to be very common to see, since the only times this thing will be noticeable is against the Battalion's backup when it's deployed, the Bloody Bracer, and the Dead Ringer. Other than that, it just kinda sucks now. Some people pair it with the Witch's Brew even though they get shut down almost immediately with no people dying to them because of its stats. Oh, another quick stereotype being added. Some people use this to distract sentry guns to let their team focus it without dying, but you know, the Wrangler exists. But not a lot of mechanics run it, so they're gonna be annoying to deal with as a mechanic. That's it really. These guys tend to suck at melee combat, so they use this weapon's bleed effect as a sore loser button if they manage to hit you enough times, just to annoy you. Even if you still win the duel, you only have a 10% chance of surviving afterwards, not from actually fighting them, but attempting to rush over to a health kit before you bleed out. Sometimes these guys just try to melee you like crazy and miss, so they eventually either murder themselves by accident, or be low enough on health to be free food to anyone to farm off of. I mean, I guess these guys also hate agents? I can't really tell. I know I'm gonna get crap for mentioning this, but I have to cover this regardless. Now, I'm only going to say a single word and you have to guess what I'm going to say. I'll give you 6 seconds. Just pause the video and look at the weapon name for a hint. Alright, I'm gonna say it now. Flava. Yep, a Soundsmith reference. I know there's gonna be comments giving me crap for saying this, but hey, I can't leave this out. But anyways, these guys just came back from watching those 2 videos about him running the bleed weapons in TF2 and calling it Flava. And they decided to recreate it in TC2 to mix results. These guys are still pretty annoying to deal with since if you peek anywhere, expect Flava to be thrown at your face. That's it really. Oh yeah, also mentioning these guys are either memeing or they completely hate agents. Discount fire extinguisher, but better. Alright, I covered everything I could possibly do into a single video and attempted to put a lot more effort and care into this video. Since Trooper has a lot more weapons and stereotypes to him, it took longer to make this video, including adding stereotypes for Flanker as well into this video. Since Rolf decided to update again, invalidating my script 3 times in a row. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video because this one drained me. It took a while to make, but it was fun making this video and it would have been possible with the amazing support and help of my friends, such as Guppy for making me this new amazing profile picture for my channel. Which Guppy, I can't thank you enough for. And a special thanks to JeffTRS, QuincasGames, The King Legend, MINDBROKEFREE, LatinaBarbzx, Eddie357, Senpai, Manny, and Brett for helping me doing some scenes and gags in this video and or voicing over some stereotypes. And also to everyone who watches my videos and my last video now reaching 6,000 views. You guys have given me something special I'll cherish forever, knowing that other people love playing typical colors too as much as I do. Also mentioning, did I miss any stereotypes for any of these weapons or miss any sends? Let me know in the comments below. I always try to read every single comment I can. Your guys' support means everything to me, and I'll talk to you guys later.